Bracho Daf Nun Daled begins the last chapter in Masechta Brachos. It's called Haroeh, and it focuses primarily on other types of brachos that are not made on something which we are enjoying. It's brachos that we say to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And these include thunder, lightning, miracles, and things like that. So the Gemara begins by quoting all the Mishnayos in the entire parak in one shot. So we're going to have a very long Mishnah here, which includes a lot of different halachos. It begins by listing things that we say brachos on. From that, it moves to the bracha on the good and the bad. From there, it moves to praying for good and bad. From there, it moves to praying when you walk into a city, walk out of a city. And there, it moves on to having the proper attitude towards a shul. These are the primary halachos in the Mishnah. Then the Gemara begins here on the daf, and it discusses the source of the bracha on miracles. And the Gemara will quote a brisa which lists many different miracles that happened to the Jewish people as a whole, and it'll explain each one. It also has a few individual miracle stories. From there, the Gemara moves into the halacha of a person who has to say berchas hagomel, the bracha which we say when something great happens to you. And from there, the Gemara moves on to a series of lists, such as a list of people who need a special shmira, and the list of people who stretch out in certain things that they do for a long amount of time, and the effect that it has on them. So let's begin the Mishnah. The Mishnah, of course, begins with a list of things that you say a bracha on, a birchas hashevach, what we call a praise bracha. So first on the list is if you arrive at a place where a miracle happened to the entire Jewish people, you say the bracha who did a miracle to our forefathers in this place. If you arrive at a land which belongs to Eretz Yisrael that the Akum were thrown out of, you say a Baruch She'akar Akum Me'aratzeinu, he who threw the Goyim out of our land. If you see a comet, or you experience earthquakes, or thunder, or wind, or lightning, very strong wind, on all these things you say that his strength and his power fill the world. The Gemara will explain that these things are visible, or you can feel them from very far away, and therefore the power of it is filling the world. Now, if you see very tall mountains, hills, if you see seas, rivers, or wildernesses, you say Baruch Oiseh Bereshis. Another version is Baruch Oiseh Maaseh Bereshis, who created the work of the beginning. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says on the Yam HaGadol, on the Great Sea, it's not clear if that refers to the Mediterranean or to the Atlantic, you say a special bracha, Baruch She'asa es Yam HaGadol. Since it's so big and it has a very special manner of impressing people with its size, therefore you say a special bracha on that. Now the Gemara says that's only if you see it not too often. You see it all the time, you don't say a bracha on it. We will explain that that's if you haven't seen it in 30 days. Now, on special rains, or on good news that you hear, you say Baruch HaTov v'Hametiv, he who is good and does good. You hear bad news, you say Baruch Dayan HaEmes, who is the true judge. If you build yourself a new house, or you buy new clothing, you say Shechianu v'Kimanu v'Genu Lazman Hazeh, that he has kept us alive and let us last until this special time. Okay, that's the list of brachos. Now the Gemara goes to the Mishnah, discusses the concept of saying a bracha on the good and on the bad. The Mishnah says, just like you say a bracha on the good, you say a bracha on the bad, and your bracha on the good should include some element of the bad, and your bracha on the bad should include some element of the good. The Gemara will explain what all these things are. Now the Gemara says you cannot pray to Hashem about something which already happened. For example, if somebody's wife is pregnant already, you cannot pray that the child should be a boy or a girl, because it already is what it is. You can't pray about something that already exists. That's asking for a miracle to change. So that you can't do. It's called tefillas shav. It's called a useless prayer. Now, if similarly, another example of that, if somebody was walking on the road and he hears screaming coming from the city, so he shouldn't say, "Oh Hashem, please make it that's not from my house." Well, either it is or it isn't. And it already is from wherever it is. You cannot pray that. That's asking Hashem to change what already exists. Now the Gemara says if you're traveling and you're passing through a big city where there are elements there that can be threatening to you, so you should say a bracha on the way in and a bracha on the way out. On the way in you say one, asking Hashem to save you from harm, and on the way out you thank him for saving you from harm. Ben Azai says you say two brachas on the way in, one for thanking him for up till now and asking for the future, and two on the way out, also thanking for up till now and asking for the future. Now the Gemara says, the Mishnah, expounds on the idea that you should say a bracha even on the bad things that happen to you, and the Mishnah explains a pasuk. It says, "V'haftas Hashem lekacha b'chol levavcha." You should love Hashem with all your heart. B'chol levavcha means with two hearts, with your yetzer tov and your yetzer hara. B'chol nafshecha, with all your soul. That means even if Hashem takes away your soul. B'chol ma'idecha means with all your money. Another explanation, b'chol ma'idecha means b'chol mida umida, every type of thing that happens to you. And this is another source for good things and bad things. You should thank Hashem and love Hashem for both of them. Now, the Mishnah now moves on to some halachos of proper respect for a shul or for the Beis HaMikdash. The Mishnah says you should not be lightheaded, you shouldn't be acting silly if you are facing the eastern gate of the Beis HaMikdash. Now, all the gates of the Beis HaMikdash were lined up, so if you're facing the eastern gate, you could see all the way through to the building of the Beis HaMikdash, which is the Heichal, which is a few gates further along. Now, when you're walking into the Har HaBayis, the western wall that we have now is the wall of the Har HaBayis, the squared off mountain that the Beis HaMikdash was built on. That wall is the retaining wall of that mountain, which was squared off artificially. So you can't walk onto the Har HaBayis not with your walking stick or with your shoes or with your wallet or with dirt on your feet. These things are all disrespectful. It shows that you're treating it like a road. You also cannot take a shortcut through the Har HaBayis, and you also can't spit on the Har HaBayis. Okay, now the Mishnah says in the Beis HaMikdash, when they ended off a bracha, they would add the phrase ad ha'olam. Rashi explains, at the end of each bracha, they said, they would add the words bracha to Hashem Elokei Yisrael min ha'olam. Now, the Mishnah explains that what happened is that the apikarsim, the blasphemers, were saying, oh, you're thanking Hashem from the world. That means there is only one world. There is no world to come. So they said, min ha'olam ve'ad ha'olam, from one world to the next world, implying that there are clearly two worlds. Now, this addition was put in place by Ezra HaSofer and his group. The Mishnah now has another thing that was put in place by him, and that is you should greet people with the name of Hashem. You should say, Baruch atah Hashem. We learned that from Boaz in the story of Rus. So he greeted his workers, he said, Hashem imachem, and they greeted him, and they said, Yivarechecha Hashem. Now, the Mishnah adds some more sources for this practice of greeting with Hashem's name. It says that when the Malach, the angel, greeted Gidon, he said, Hashem imcha gibar chayil, Hashem is with you, great, strong warrior. So again, he used Hashem's name in the greeting. And now, the Mishnah says finally that the Chachamim who created this learned it from Boaz, from the Rus story, and they said that the pasuk says, Al tavoz ki zikna imecha, do not be rejecting the ways of your nation. That teaches us that you should do what your elders have done, even though zikna, even though they're old. And therefore we should follow the ways of Boaz, even though he was old and he was ancient. Another source for this is it says, Eis lasos Hashem hefer terasecha. When it's time to do for Hashem, you could even violate the Torah. Rabbi Nassan says that means that they rejected some of the laws of the Torah in order to do for Hashem, meaning in order to make it, to protect the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor. We did something which actually violates his honor. It would violate his honor to use his name in vain, but we're doing it in order to spread Hashem's name in the world so that people will be often quoting him and turn others away from Avera. We now begin the Gemara, which discusses the halacha that you're supposed to say a bracha on a place where you saw an ace that happened to all of Klal Yisrael. So the Gemara asks, how do you know that? The Gemara quotes a pasuk. Yisro said, Baruch Hashem asher hitzil esa'am. So you see that Yisro said a bracha on the fact that Hashem saved all of Klal Yisrael. Now the Gemara asks, hold on a second, only on all of Klal Yisrael you should say a bracha? You don't say a bracha on a miracle that happened to a single individual? Now the Gemara will bring two stories to show that you do. First story is that there was a person who was walking in a place called Aver Yamina, and he was attacked by a lion. And a miracle happened to him, and he was saved from it. So he went to Rav and he said, what should I do? And he said, every time you go to that spot, you should say, Baruch she'asli nes b'makam hazeh. Second story, Mar, the son of Ravina, was walking in the valley of Arvus, and it was very thirsty, and he was apparently thirsty enough to be in a situation of sakana. And a miracle happened, and a spring of water appeared right near his foot, and he drank. And the second time, he was walking in the marketplace of Mechuza, and he was attacked by a mad camel. And he was looking for a place to run, and a wall collapsed just behind him, and he was able to walk into that house. So from then on, every time he passed the place in the valley, he said, Baruch Asali Neis Ba'arvas Ubegamel. Said Arvas first because he was in the valley of Arvas, and he also mentioned the camel. And when he was in the marketplace, he said, Baruch Asali Neis Begamel Ube'arvas. So you see, even individuals are supposed to say a bracha. So the answer is yes, true. But if it's a public miracle, then everybody says the bracha. If it's a private miracle, it happened only to one person, then he's the only one who says the bracha. And our Mishnah is talking about public miracle. The Gemara now quotes a brisa which has a list of various different miracles that happen to Klal Yisrael as a whole, and then the Gemara will expound on each one of the things mentioned in the brisa one at a time. So the brisa says as follows: somebody who passes the spot where Kriyas Yamsuf happened, or the spot where Klal Yisrael crossed the Yarden, that was also miraculous, or where they passed the canyon of Arnon, Nachli Arnon, or if he passes Avnei El Gabish, that translates to hailstones, or if those are in the slopes of a place called Beis Charon, or if he is near the stone that Oig, the king of the Bashan, wanted to throw on Klal Yisrael, or if he passes the stone that Moshe Rabbeinu sat on at the time that Yeshua performed his war against Amalek, or if he passes Lot's wife, or if he passes the wall of Yericho that was swallowed up by the ground. On all these places, if he passes them, he has to say Hoida'a v'shavach, thanks and praise before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the Gemara goes through this list one at a time. Okay, so Kriyas Yamsuf, we know what that is. Crossing the Yarden, we know what that is. It says Vayamnu Kahanim Noisei Aron Abris. The Kahanim stood in the river carrying the Aron, and the water stopped, and Klal Yisrael was able to pass through on dry land. So now the Gemara asks, though, what happened by the canyons of Nachale Arnon? What was that story? So the Gemara says we have a pasuk which is difficult to translate. The pasuk says, Al Kain Yemru b'Sefer Mechamas Hashem. It will say in the book of the wars of Hashem, Es Vahev B'Sufa, and the rest of it. So the Gemara wants to know, Es Vahev B'Sufa, what does that mean? There are various different ways of explaining this. The Gemara now gives a drush to explain it. The Gemara says, Es is a person's name, and Hav is a person's name. Es Vahav. Es and Hav were two people who had tzaras, and they were walking b'seifa. They were walking at the end of Klal Yisrael because they were tzaraim. They had to be outside the camp, so they were behind everybody else. Now, what happened? Klal Yisrael was traveling on the way into Eretz Yisrael, and the Amoroi, the Goyim who lived there, were plotting to ambush Klal Yisrael. They hid in caves in one of the mountains that was on the banks of the river Arnon, and their plan was that they were going to throw things at Klal Yisrael as they passed underneath them. But they did know that the Aron went before Klal Yisrael, and the Aron was good at flattening mountains or moving them. So what happened was, as soon as the Aron went by, the mountain that they were hiding in and the mountain directly across the river from it came together, and they clapped, and everybody who was in there got squished. So Klal Yisrael didn't notice anything because it happened just before they passed, and they didn't see that anything happened. But these two guys, Es and Hav, who were walking behind the camp, they saw the blood seeping out of the mountains and flowing into the river, so they informed Klal Yisrael of everything that happened. That's the miracle that happened there, and that's also the meaning of Es Vahiv B'Sufa. On that, the pasuk describes the flow of the streams, which went until the city of Or and the border of Moab, which is where this happened. Okay, now everyone wants to know, what is Avnei El Gabish? It translates to hailstones, but what's it referring to? So the Gemara says, El Gabish is a contraction of the words Al Gav Ish. It happened because of a man. So these are stones which stopped because of a man, and they started because of a man. Stopped because of a man refers to Moshe Rabbeinu, who is called Ish, like it says, V'ho Ish Moshe Anav Moed. Now, when did they stop because of man? So in Makas Barad in Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu said that the barad should stop, and the Torah says that the hail stopped and the barad didn't hit the ground. So that means that it froze in midair. It stopped hanging in the air, and that's where it stayed until much later, where Yeshua was defending a nation Yeshua was defending the Givonim who made a treaty with him from the Amori who attacked them, and these stones, the same stones now loosed themselves from where they were stuck in the sky, and they came and they attacked the Amorei soldiers who were already running across the slopes of the mountain called Beis Charon, and they were destroyed by that. So that is the Ish that released those stones, and that is the miracle of Beis Charon and the Avnei El Gabish. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know, what is the stone that Oig wanted to throw onto Klal Yisrael? What is that about? So the Gemara says Oig made the following calculation. He said that the Jewish people are in a camp which is 3 parseis by 3 parseis wide. It's approximately 7 or 8 square miles. So Oig said, simple, I'll go find a mountain that has a base that's that same size, and I'll pick it up and I'll throw it at them. So that's what he did. He found a mountain and he picked it up, and he was carrying it on his head. I guess it was a little heavy for him, and he was going to throw it on Klal Yisrael. So what did Hashem do? He sent ants who chewed a hole around Oig's head in the mountain, and then the entire mountain fell on his neck. He was trying to get it off, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu made his teeth stick out and get stuck in the mountain, so he couldn't get it off. This is the meaning of the pasuk that says Shine Rishayim Shibarta, the teeth of the Rishayim you broke, but we have a drush that it's not Shibarta, it's Sharbavta, which means that they were stretched out. Now, what happened in the end? Moshe Rabbeinu, who was 10 amos tall, picked up an axe that was 10 amos long, and he jumped 10 amos in the air, and he was able to reach all the way till Oig's ankle, and he struck him there, and he died. Okay, now what is the story about the stone that Moshe Rabbeinu sat on? So we learned that when Amalek attacked Klal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu sat on a stone, and he had his arms held up. Whenever his arms were up, Klal Yisrael were winning the war, and eventually they defeated them and won the battle. Okay, now what's the story with the walls of Yericho? So the walls of Yericho were surrounded by Yeshua, and he made them collapse. So the Gemara says, first of all, you said they were swallowed into the ground. It doesn't sound like they were swallowed into the ground. If you read the Psukim, it says, Vatipol ha'chayim tachteh. The wall fell underneath it. So Gemara says, the walls were square. They were as wide as they were tall. So if it would topple over, it wouldn't do much. It had to fall into the ground. That's what that means. Okay, now the Gemara says, what's the story with Lot's wife? When she was fleeing from Sodom, she turned around and she became a pillar of salt. So the Gemara says, that's not a miracle. That's a punishment. Why would you say a bracha on that? So the Gemara says, yeah, you say bracha dayan emes. The Gemara says, what do you mean? The Brisa said you say hoidah and shevach, praise and thanks. Where it says, yeah, on Lot and his wife, you say 2 brachas. You say the bracha of Dayan Ha'emes, and you say thank you to Hashem who remembers tzaddikim. Because when Lot was escaping, the pasuk says that Hashem remembered Avram. Now the Gemara quotes a related list. Rabbi Yehuda Merav says there are 4 people who have to say hoidah. They have to say the bracha, which we call berachas hagoimel. They are somebody who travels through the sea, somebody who travels through the wilderness, somebody who is sick and recovers, and somebody who was in prison and he is released. Now the Gemara wants a source for each of these 4 things, and the Gemara quotes for all of them psukim from Tehillim chapter Kuf Zayin, and the Gemara quotes many psukim at length. The chapter quotes all these 4 things, and the Gemara spells them out. I'm going to read just the English translation of the psukim. First of all, how do you know the traveling in ships? So it says, those who go down to the sea in ships, who do their work in great waters, they have seen the deeds of Hashem and his wonders in the watery deep. He spoke and raised the stormy wind and lifted its waves. They rise heavenward, ascend to the depths. Their soul melts with trouble. They reel. They stagger like a drunk. All the wisdom is swallowed up. Then they cried out to Hashem in their distress, and he would take them out of their straits. He would halt the storm, restore the calmness, and the waves were stilled. And they rejoiced because they were quiet, and he guided them to their desired boundary. Let them give thanks to Hashem, that's our source, for all his kindness and his wonders to the children of man. Let them exalt him in the assembly of people, and praise him in the session of the elders. Now, how do we know that somebody travels through the wilderness? So the psukim say there as well. They wandered in the wilderness, in the desolation of the path. They found no inhabited city, hungry as well as thirsty. Their soul grew faint within them. They cried out to Hashem in their distress. He would rescue them from their straits. He led them upon a straight path to go to an inhabited city. Let them give thanks to Hashem for his kindness and his wonders for the children of man. For he sated the yearning soul and filled the hungry soul with good. That's the source you have to give thanks for traveling through the wilderness. Next is recovery of sick people. The same capital in Tehillim says as follows: fools! Because of their sinful path and because of their iniquities were afflicted. Their soul abhorred all food, and they reached until the portals of death. And then they cried out to Hashem in their distress. He would save them from their straits. He would dispatch his word and cure them. Let them escape their destruction. Let them give thanks to Hashem. There's our source. For his kindness and his wonders to the children of man. And let them slaughter thanksgiving offerings and relate his works with a joyful song. Now we need the source of somebody who was released from prison. And the psukim there continue. Those who sat in darkness and in the shadow of death, shackled in affliction and iron, because they rebelled against the words of God and scorned the counsel of the Supreme One. So he humbled their heart with hard labor. They stumbled. There was none to help. Then they cried out to Hashem in their distress. He would save them from their straits. He would take them out of darkness and the shadow of death and break open their shackles. Let them give thanks to Hashem for his kindness and his wonders to the children of man, for he smashed copper gates and cut asunder iron bolts. Now the Gemara continues discussing the halacha of Berachas Hagama. First of all, what is the text? Rabbi Yehuda says, Baruch Hagama Chasodim Tovim. Abaye says you got to say it in front of 10 people. Marzotra says, and you have to have 2 Talmidei Chachamim there. How do you know 2 Talmidei Chachamim? Well, first of all, how do you know 10? Because it says, V'yirememuhu b'kahal am, you should uplift him in a kahal. Kahal is a minion. How do you know you have 2 Talmidei Chachamim there? It says, Moshe Zakanim Yihalaluhu, and that means you got to have Zakanim there. So the Gemara asks, so maybe they should all 10 should be Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara says, no, it just says, it doesn't say Kahal Zakanim, it says Moshe Zakanim. You have to have 2 Talmidei Chachamim there. So maybe you have to have 10. Now the Gemara asks, maybe you have to have a minion plus 2 Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara says, okay, Akasha. That's not terrible. Okay, now the Gemara quotes a story. Where says Rav Yehuda was ill and he recovered, and somebody with the name of Rav Chana from Baghdad, which Rashi says was the capital city after the destruction of Babylon, came to visit him, and they said, Brich Rachmana de'Yava Nilan v'layaval Afrach. Blessed is the Holy One, the Merciful One, who has given you to us and not to the dust. So Rav Yehuda said, now I don't have to say Berachas Hagama anymore. Where says, hold on a second, but he has to say in the presence of a minion. So where says, okay, so there was 10 people there. So, but he didn't do it himself. So he said Amen, and then he is Yetzer. Okay, now this list of the 4 people who have to say Berachas Hagama was taught by Rav Yehuda. Now the Gemara brings other lists that Rav Yehuda taught us. Rav Yehuda says there are 3 people who need extra protection. They're at risk of being attacked by shadim, demons who like to attack those who are having good fortune, and the 3 people are a chassan, a kala, and a person who is sick. A person who is sick is not having good fortune, but he's in a situation of susceptibility. In times of danger, a person's mitzvahs are carefully analyzed. Then the Gemara quotes a brisa. The brisa says that the following people need protection: a sick person, a woman who's just given birth, a chassan, a kala, and some add also an aval, a mourner. And then there are some that even add a Talmud Chacham at night, should not travel around without protection. Okay, next list that Rabbi Yehuda said, there are 3 things that make a person have long life. Somebody spends a long time in tefillah, somebody spends a long time at his table, and that means that he sits there for a long time so that poor people can come and he can feed them, and somebody spends a long time in the bathroom. The Gemara says that's healthy. The Gemara says, you sure it's a good idea to spend a long time in tefillah? We had this earlier. Somebody who says a long tefillah is going to end up suffering or heartache. The Gemara says we have another source you shouldn't be lengthy in your tefillah. It says there are 3 things which recall a person's sins before the heavenly court. Being too deep in your tefillah, and going near a leaning wall, and judging somebody else. So my answer is no. The problem with tefillah in these cases is that the person is relying on his zechusim, and he's expecting his tefillah to be fulfilled. You don't expect your tefillah to be fulfilled, you just pray long because you have a lot to say. Then you could, and the Gemara says, what should you do? You should rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Rahman.